At the time I made this video, we're on the eve of deliberations for the hush money trial of Donald J. Trump. So his fate of being convicted or acquitted, or at worst, a hung jury, is in the hands of the jury. He refused to testify because he's chicken and a serial perjurer. And is he actually guilty of this? Well, ask yourself, is P. Diddy guilty? And like P. Diddy before the video came out, he's denying everything, with receipts all over the place, and the prosecution called like 20 witnesses. The defense called just one witness, and he got in a fight with the judge. The judge cleared the courtroom, including the jury, to not prejudice the jury while he tongue-lashed that witness. So if that's the only witness you got, then you don't have much of a case for your defendant now, do you? Trump paid hush money to a porn star to get her silence. This was in 2016, shortly after grab him by the P controversy. In case you forgot, here it is.
I moved on her, actually. You know, she was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and her. She was married.
It's huge news, Sarah.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
Yep, that's Trump on tape, bragging about sexually assaulting women and getting away with it because he's famous. How classy. So he paid off the porn star and falsified business records to cover it up. That is a crime. The only people who don't seem to accept that are the people in his cult who watch Fox News on loop. So let's cut the bullshit. Trump is a villain, and you have very low standards if you're voting for this guy. I have a bridge in Brooklyn I want to sell to you. He's just that slimy, creepy guy that's in the alley who's playing 3-card Monty, but simply on a larger scale. He mixes hype and entertainment into his criminality. So the people that he's robbing the most actually like him. He's like a mashup of 3 different real-life villains. He's one part John Gotti, a New York mob boss who can't keep his mouth shut, loves the camera and the limelight, expects total loyalty to him, but he has no loyalty to you, and has access to a private army to intimidate people who try to oppose it. Ironically, John Gotti was known as a Teflon Don because nothing seemed to stick to him. Donald Trump is using that phrase as well, but eventually his luck is going to run out too. John Gotti got convicted and spent the rest of his life in prison, by the way. And ironically, it was Rudy Giuliani who persecuted John Gotti. So dude went from persecuting gangsters to actually working for one in Trump. And what exactly did he gain from that except for getting himself in trouble too? Trump also reminds me of Jim Jones. He was the leader of the People's Temple. He was the head of a church he founded in Indiana that wound up moving to San Francisco. Jones turned his church into a cult of personality around himself. His church bought land in Guyana, a small country in South America, and him and hundreds of his cult members committed mass suicide by drinking poison Kool-Aid. The reverence for Trump's most hardcore supporters have for him is definitely cult-like this. And the way I feel about it is if the hardcore members of MAGA want to go out like the Jim Jones cult, then go ahead. And the third real-life historical villain he reminds me most of is probably P.T. Barnum. He's the one credited for saying there's a sucker born every minute. And considering that a slimy New York con man who was bankrupt 5 times and married 3 times rose to the level of becoming president of the United States without any political or military experience whatsoever shows that P.T. Barnum was right, because 70 million people in America determined that it was okay to vote for a man who said he'd be dating Ivanka if she wasn't his daughter. Just let that sink in. For those who say they support Trump but they're Christian, doesn't add up. And these images are not Photoshopped or retouched. Yeah. Back to Barnum. Barnum was the creator of what we call the circus. You know, the now defunct Barnum and Bailey circus. All spectacle, non-stop entertainment. It's exploitive, it's nonsensical, but it's fun to watch. And that's what some people actually liked about Trump, that he's actually entertaining to watch, you know, in an insult comic type of way, sort of like Andrew Dice Clay or Sam Kinison. I mean, that'd be okay if he was just an entertainer, but, you know, as president, he would have access to nuclear codes. Hey, Dave Chappelle is my favorite comedian, but I don't think he should have access to a nuclear arsenal. So if we're talking about real life villains, Trump is a mix of John Gotti, the gangster, Jim Jones, the cult leader, and P.T. Barnum, the showman. Trump feels like me, like some poorly written villain from a Steven Seagal movie. And if his rise to the presidency and his attempt to try to do it again wasn't real and was fictional, there'd be a lot of people having a hard time digesting this, saying, nah, that's just too unrealistic. So allow me to have some fun with this and look at what fictional villain does Trump most remind you of. The classic bully Biff from Back to the Future. He's not as funny and charming as he thinks he is, but he'll get his way by punching you in the face. But underneath it all, he's just an insecure jerk, and the way to beat him is just to punch him back. Trump is also a lot like the Kingpin. He's a greedy real estate mogul from New York. He's infiltrated the law and media to try to spin his corruption. At the end of the day, he's just a greedy, power-hungry madman. And he's the hero of his own story, but he's actually the villain. The real heroes are Daredevil and Spider-Man, who are trying to stop him. Or you could compare Trump to somebody like, say, Dr. Evil. He has all these nefarious ideas he's going to do to try to take over the world, but he's massively incompetent incompetent. He explains his evil secret schemes by over-monologuing, especially on social media. When Pence was working for Trump as his vice president, he was sort of like number 2. You know, I'll go along with you with some of this evil for power, but even I can't stick around with this level of incompetence and evil. But the fictional villain that Trump most reminds me of is probably Cartman from South Park. Because just like Cartman, Trump is narcissistic, sociopathic, racist, and untrustworthy. And on top of that, extremely incompetent because the scheme seems so petty and childish. I mean, he's running against Nikki Haley in the primary for the Republican nomination, and he's calling her bird brain repeatedly and was giving hints that her husband was out cheating on her when he was actually serving in the military. And he needs her voters to come over to him so he can win the general election in November, but he just can't help himself because Donald Trump is Eric Cartman. And saying that, we could have a conviction of the first U.S. president of the United States by May 31st of this year. Should he be convicted? Yes. Will he be convicted? I don't know, because all you need is one juror out of 12 to vote no, and then you have a hung jury. But the trial is taking place in Manhattan, where they can't stand Trump. He moved from New York to Florida for a reason, because they can't stand him there and they're tired of his lies, distraction, division, and nonsense. And saying that, I put the chances of conviction around 85%, because there's over 30 counts of falsifying business records. So they don't have to find him guilty on all the counts, but some of the counts are going to stick. So in saying that, let's see what happens with the verdict. In 2024, a Trump conviction and a Diddy indictment would be most welcome. Please vote for Joe Biden in 2024, even if you don't like him, because the other choice is going to be Trump, most likely, even if he gets convicted, and that's just not good. How do you explain to your kids that the president is a convicted felon? In my community tab, I will have polling of which villain do you think that Trump most reminds you of? Is it Biff, the Kingpin, Dr. Evil, or Eric Cartman? Be sure to speak up in the comment section and vote in the poll. I know that MAGA cultists are going to show up and try to vouch for their leader. What are you going to do? Unsubscribe? Ooh, I'm so scared. I normally don't get this deep into politics on my channel, but this is a major event in U.S. history. I wanted to be known where I stand during this inflection point. Until next time, this is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying, in our fairness, I'll let Trump have the last word.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.